Hi, I'm Meg from Lancaster Textiles. Welcome to my channel. So hi and welcome back to my channel, Lancaster Textiles. Today's project is a really simple shopping bag. I've made it a little bit different with a nice curved edge. It's finished off with a facing at the top, and the rows of stitching help secure your straps. I turned through these straps so that there are only 2 layers, and it's not lined, so it's just overlocked as a nice neat finish. So it's suitable for a lot of different kinds of fabric. This is a cotton duck, just a slightly heavier weight cotton. This is a curtain fabric, beautiful ginkgo leaves. A very 80s denim that's made quite a sturdy bag. This one here was a pair of wide leg jeans that I made into shorts. So the pieces that I cut off have made a really great denim bag, and this is a nice linen, little bit less structure to that bag, beautiful colour, and for extra strength with the linen, I've top stitched the straps, and you can see again there's a facing in there that holds those straps nice and secure. So I'll pop those to the side. So this is a bag that again uses one of our quilter's rulers that a lot of us have. I bought this one to help centre a very large block, and I don't really use it that much, and so I like to perhaps have some projects that we can use our quilter's rulers that might be just sitting aside there. So this is a 15.5 by 15.5 square, and all I do, this fabric's laid out with the selvages lined up. I've got 4 layers here. I sometimes make a few bags at once. I don't want my selvage holes to show, so I'll line that up, and I'm just going to use my chalk pencil just to trace right around that square. Oops. So we've got a square, and then we need a strip for our facing and a strip for our straps. So I'll just line that up. We have a 3-inch rectangle. Add that on the top. One for our facing and another one for our straps. So nice and easy. So we've got a square, facing and straps. And now that's ready to cut out. So just a little hint to help with cutting out. I'll often deliberately line my fabrics up so that I've got right sides together, because that's the way I'm going to overlock and then stitch them. So I've marked out my square, and then I'll pin it. I don't particularly like using the rotary cutter on some of these furnishing fabrics, so I'll just use a pair of scissors, but I'm going to just pin all around the edges, particularly the corners. I've got pins going through all my 4 layers of fabric. So that's all ready to cut out, and then we'll get to the sewing table. Okay, so I'm back here at my overlocker, my trusty Burnett overlocker, last serviced at Elsie's Sewing and Knitting Machines in Bendigo a long time ago. Now what I do first is I actually overlock 3 edges of this bag, and on the 2 bottom ones I just mark out a curve. I've just used a lid of a tin just to mark out a curve on that. Put them to the side and I overlock. So I'm just going to take off a few millimetres of each side. Because it's a square, it doesn't matter, but 3 sides. Just pull that cut piece off so it comes nicely out. And when I get to here, I'll just roughly follow my pencil line. So I've drawn that curve just a fraction in from the cut edges. You can see I'm just going slowly around that edge, using my hands to manipulate the fabric. Don't need that pin anymore. And again, just going around. Might need to lift my presser foot a little bit. Just chopping off a little bit of fabric so we get a nice neat edge. And that's 3 sides overlocked, ready for stitching. So I'm back at my sewing machine. You can see I've got my nice curved edges here on both those bottom curves of the bag, and I'm now going to stitch. So this might be considered a little bit backwards in doing steps, but I find overlocking these curves first makes for a much more manageable, and you can get up nice and close to your overlocking here, which means that when you turn this bag through, especially the curves, you've got a nice narrow seam which can help you get a much neater finish. So I'm going to stitch right up close to my overlock. I only overlock normally with 1 needle in, so it's just a 3-thread finish, and here's where my single line a straight stitch was on the overlocking. Just getting nice and close around that curve. And we've got the bottom of our bag stitched together. So the next step I'll do is I'll stitch our straps. So this is just 2 of your rectangles that you cut, 3 inches by 15.5. And I stitch right sides together along the long side, just a narrow pin if you need to. This fabric tends to sit nicely together. And an easy method of turning these through is I'll actually stitch across one end. And then I'll turn these straps through. I learnt this method from the amazing ladies in Sew for Charity Oyen group. They do lots of bags for Peter Mac. They make drainage bags. And this is an easy method of turning a tube through. So I've stitched this end here and I'm going to push that end in on itself. Just pull those ends apart and we're going to push that end in. And then you feed it through. Feed that through. So here's my stitched end. I'll pull that off my special turning tool and we'll pull everything out right sides together. So this end here, I'll feed it back in. And I'll push those ends out. And what I actually do is I then snip this end off because I'm going to catch them in my facings, and then I press it so that that seam is in the centre. You can feel which way your seam allowance is and have that so that it's even all the way up. And then I'll go to the iron and I'll give that a press so that that seam allowance is nicely centred all the way across. All right, I've got my 2 straps made. The seam nicely pressed so that it's in the centre, so that indicates the wrong side of your straps. And I'll put them aside. Now the facing. So we've got our second rectangle, again 3 inches by 15.5, and I'm going to line up so that we can stitch this on. We're now ready to stitch our facing onto our main bag piece, and we've taken a little bit off this bottom piece here. So what I'm going to do is I line up our facing pieces right sides together, and I've drawn a line here to indicate my stitching line, and that matches up with where my stitching line is on my bottom piece of the bag, and I'll just do that again on this piece, just marking those two lines, and that's where I'll stitch. So I'm stitching right on that line that I marked. Just back and forth for a little bit of strength. I can bring that other one around. I've marked my line, just matching that up with where my needle is, stitching right along that line. So you can see I've now got my facing piece. I'm going to press these seams open just to reduce a little bit of the bulk, and I'll pin it on, matching up centres. So while I'm here, I can put a pin in the centre of these. And I'll do the same with my bag piece so that I've got 4 points to match up when we're stitching them together. I've got my two pieces right sides together, and you can see I've marked the centres in each, and I've got my side seams to match up. So I shall pin those together, and we'll put the straps in at the same time. So I've got my pieces pinned together at the centre and at the side seams, and I'm going to mark where I want the centre of my straps to be. Now for this one, it's 7 centimetres out from the centre. So I shall mark that, and I've also done it up here on the other side, and we shall take one of our strap pieces. Now this is the wrong side, this is the right side. I'll thread it through. Careful I'm not twisting it, so that the right side of the strap is against the right side of my bag, and I'm going to just push it out a bit so that I can see where my seam is, and I'm going to extend that beyond the seam for about 1 centimetre. That gives us just some extra strength, and I'll pin it in place. Do the same, just again making sure I'm not twisting. I've got my right side of my strap to the wrong side of the bag. I can see my centre here extending out a little bit. Push it back in so that it's about 1 centimetre beyond, and pin it. I'll put a few more pins just to hold these layers together. Now for this, I'm pinning 90 degrees to where I'll be stitching so that you can get up right close to those pins, and that allows for a very accurate stitching. So we'll turn that over, grab my other strap, we'll do the same. Thread it through under that facing, coming up, and we've got it just extending out a little bit, securing it with the pin. Again, making sure I'm not twisting that strap, and again keeping it in place with a pin. I'll put the rest of these pins in, and then we'll go back to the machine. Back at the machine, and I'm going to stitch all of these layers together. So again, I'm just using just a narrow seam allowance. This is probably a little bit over 1/4 of an inch. And having those pins means that I can get up nice and close, nice and accurate. Securing all those layers. This is my side seam, so I've pressed that seam open on the facing. I have given the bag a good press, including all around the bottom and the side seams, and I've pressed the facing so that the seam is facing up, and we've caught our straps in there. So the seam here starting to fray a fair bit, which is why we overlock first. And I shall now pin my facing so that I catch the raw edges, and we've got a nice double layer there to stitch around when we're ready to stitch. So I'll just catch that one with a pin. I'll go over to the other side seam. If you wanted to, you could just neaten this up if you're using a similar fabric. So we're matching up, folding down that facing and then turning. You can see our straps here. I like to catch them, and then we turn that down, and with our layer of top stitching, those straps will be nice and secure. You can see I fold it to those raw edges meet, and then we fold it down. So I'll continue to do that all the way around, and then we'll do some top stitching to finish off. So I've pinned that facing all the way around, and we'll do 2 layers of top stitching to secure it. So I might just start at a less noticeable part of the bag, just near the side seam. I'm going to line my foot up with this edge here, but I'm going to move my needle over so I'm nice and close. Just a few smaller stitches, And I'm going to increase my stitch length. And I just want to make sure that I've got this edge nicely lined up. And I'm going to stitch around. I'm just pulling those pins down out of the way because I'm then going to top stitch along this bottom edge of the facing. So to save repinning it, I'll just pull them out so that I can go along. And I'm nearly back to the start. Just neaten up that edge there. And I'm back to where I started. And then I can go straight back down, move my needle position over, and we'll stitch the bottom edge. Take the pins out this time. Won't need them anymore. We're nearly back to the start. Just snip those loose threads. And on the right side, snip here. So we've got a great little shopping bag now. It could be a project bag for your stitching, your knitting or your crochet. Great little bag to take, folds up nice. Love this ginkgo fabric. Also great as a gift. The denim ones that I'm doing would be excellent plain bags to feature a stitchery or a paper piece block, something like that. Just a handy little bag to have for all sorts of reasons, or none at all.